Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining this session, CI-CD as enabler to building next generation networks. Before we start, we can perhaps introduce ourselves.
Yeah, I'm Fuchao from China Mobile. I'm the technical manager for the Future Cloud Continuous Delivery Center and also working in OpenNFV community and OpenStack community.
I'm Fatih Dermanci working for Ericsson Software Technology. And like Fuchao, I'm a member of OpenNFV community as part of Linux Foundation networking, working with CI-CD and infrastructure areas. So the idea with this talk is actually to give you some information about how important CI-CD when it comes to building next generation networks. As you might have seen probably last few days during this conference, everyone is talking about 5G and the 5G networks that are currently built heavily using open technologies. And in order to build these new networks and use the open source technologies, we need to ensure we have good CI/CD systems in place so we can put these different technologies together. And during the talk, we will share perspectives from community and also as an end user. So you get the idea how important it is to collaborate across communities, between communities and end users, and also between vendors, communities, and end users. So we all need to collaborate and ensure we have the CI/CD systems in place to allow us to bring these different technologies together and build next generation networks. So, as we said, we are members of OpenNFV community, and the long name is Open Platform for Network Functions Virtualization. And if we take an example from the Open Infrastructure Summit, the 5G network demonstrated here is built on open technologies such as OpenStack. And the core networks also use the open technologies. And if you are into network functions virtualization, you probably know what NFVI is. And within our community, within OpenNFV community, we work on developing reference platform for NFVI based on SDN architecture. And OpenNFV community is a unique community in a way because we don't develop anything ourselves. Generally, when you look at all the open source communities, they develop some technologies like OpenStack develops OpenStack, Kata containers work with Kata containers, Kubernetes community develops Kubernetes. But in our community, we just take what other communities develop and we try to put them together to see if they work in expected way or in a way that solves our problems. And we do that like a customer. Our infrastructure consists of federated labs donated by our member companies, and we run all our integration and testing on bare metal machines to ensure that what we do in our project is giving more feedback or additional feedback to upstream communities, saying these communities, okay, everything worked fine in your CI/CD pipelines, but when we take these versions, such as OpenStack and SDN controller, Open Daylight, it doesn't really work because you didn't have testing for that combination within your community. And with this feedback, we ensure that these different communities, OpenStack and Open Daylight in this example, can work together to address the challenges the end users might be having in their labs or in the field. And this puts a lot of importance on CI/CD because it is nearly impossible to bring all these different technologies together. And what you see on this diagram is just the limited number of technologies OpenNFV is working. We have more technologies we are working with. And I don't think anyone can integrate all these technologies manually. So in order for us to ensure we bring these technologies together and test them like a customer, we have to have good automation and good CI/CD in place. And if you look at the diagram which is available on OpenNFV website, this, like the left-hand one, looks like it's the NFV architecture, and on the right-hand side you see what OpenNFV deals with. And we have integration projects. We take different components together, different technologies together, we put them together and see if they work. We also have different feature projects that directly work in upstream. Since OpenNFV mantra is work in upstream, we go and fix certain missing features from telco point of view because OpenNFV community tries to address telecom requirements or tries to see if the requirements coming from telecom industry is really implemented in upstream communities. And if we find a missing feature in upstream communities, we create a project in OpenNFV And that project works with upstream communities to get that missing feature in place. Also, as expected perhaps, most important thing for OpenFV is the testing. Yeah, we integrate, that is quite important, but if you don't test that integrated stack, then you don't know what is there actually. And we have many great test projects in OpenFV, and two of the important ones we run all the time within our CI-CD pipelines are called functional testing and platform benchmarking. So we run functional testing by pulling in different test cases from all these different communities. Like from OpenStack community, we get Tempest test case. From OpenDaylight community, we get Rally Robot test cases. And we put them together because we are testing OpenStack and OpenDaylight integration, for example. And just using OpenStack test cases or OpenStack frameworks will not tell us if that integration to the stack works. So we need to run OpenDaylight test case in that case as well. And again, reiterating the point I made before, we can't do these things manually. We have to have automation in place. And it is not just regular automation either, because if we want to get the problems fixed in upstream projects and get the new features implemented in upstream projects, we need to ensure the CI/CD pipelines in place, giving feedback to our own community, also upstream communities we are working with. So they can look at their own CI/CD feedback, saying it worked for us, and then they can look at, and they are looking at OpenFV CI/CD systems to see if what they have done and merged their master branch perhaps didn't break anything for us. If it break anything, then they can go and fix that thing in upstream. So it's this very long pipeline. If you imagine this like a full pipeline coming together from OpenStack, from commit gating, and to OpenFV system integration test, you have all different tests loops running there and giving feedback you from different aspects for different aspects of the system. And we do this by a project called Cross Community CI. And that project has been active as a sub-project in OpenFV, and we are making it a top-level project to ensure what we started a few years ago, this cross-community collaboration on CI/CD space, continues working. Because what we are doing in the communities, when it comes to developing new technologies, integrating these different technologies together and making them available to our end users, they should not cause trouble for our end users. And they should be able to try these different technologies within their labs and see what they are building when it comes to next generation networks can be built using open technologies. So this is the community aspect of the importance of CI/CD in building next generation networks, 5G, and maybe you can talk about what you are doing in China Mobile.
Thank you. So the future cloud integration is actually not only about the crossing different communities, but also about crossing different vendors to us. Taking China Mobile as an example, we build our cloud like for components of hardware, switches, OpenStack, orchestrator, VNFs, and each of the components probably will come from multiple vendors. So you can see how complicated this whole integration work will be like. To solve this problem, we're thinking that probably we should build two closed loop to make the pre-integration and testing ahead of the real field trials and real field deployments. So you can see that we try to build an integration lab as the center of the two closed loop. And on the left hand of the integration lab, we will have these labs connected with different vendors' lab. So that different vendors' software, when they have any updates or changes, if it is important enough, it will give an alert to the integration lab so that the lab can do the integration to make sure that these updates will not have influence to the already exist software and hardware in our network. So this is somehow like a pre-integration work. And on the right hand, the integration lab is actually connected with the actual data centers distributed across the whole nation, making sure that whenever we have a pre-integrated system finished, it's okay, we could set it to the actual data center to do the deployment. And whenever there is some problem, that we could repeat it again into our lab. So all these closed loops requires that we should have a common pipeline, a CI/CD process that all the vendors, the operators could follow with, so that we could close the whole loop, make it like a flow-like way. So that's why I'm working with Fatih in the XCI project in OpenNFV, hoping that we could build this kind of closed loop CI/CD system and have different vendors to plug into this whole system to make the two loops running actually.
It's like
So
it is. If you think this in a way, like now, if we look at your slide again, like we have vendors there, and it is the problem is nearly exactly same within communities and for our end users. If you change those logos and put OpenStack, OpenDaylight, Kubernetes there, the new technology is coming from communities. And we have a problem there to establish, or we have a challenge there to solve this unified or aligned or extended CI/CD pipeline. So whoever gets those technologies to their labs, which could be us as OPNFV community, which could be end users like China Mobile, so they can bring them into their labs to ensure what is happening in upstream communities is not breaking anything by running some pre-integration tests. And now we look at the vendors here, it is exactly the same problem. And all these communities and vendors, they are probably using different types of CI/CD systems, tools, and ways of working, but this shouldn't limit us to establish a common protocol across all these different CI/CD systems, no matter if it is open source or if it is like vendor end user relation. We should be able to find a way to make it possible to hook into this extended pipeline and get whatever we need from different communities to our labs, no matter who we are, and then provide feedback from our systems back to communities and vendors saying, oh, this worked fine, let's move it this version, or this didn't work for us, here is the result, here are the logs, go fix this. And ensure we have this fast repetition and more agility in developing new technologies and providing new services to our end users, both from community perspective or also the vendor and operator perspectives. So, yeah, any questions about this dream having CI/CD across all these communities and perhaps reaching to the vendors and end users to streamline how the pipelines are constructed? Yeah. Yeah, we are actually working on a white paper talking about these things. About a year ago, different communities came together talking about exactly this problem. We had a two-day workshop, and there were 8 communities there: OpenStack, CNCF, OpenDaylight, OpenFV, FIDO, ONUP, all these different communities. And the topic was exactly this: how we can ensure that we have visibility of this problem, because each of the communities, they have great CI/CD systems, but there is not many people or community looking at this top-level CI/CD that brings everything together. And the common understanding within that workshop was that we should work together on this thing as all these communities, and perhaps publish a white paper talking about these challenges and call people for action to help out with these things, perhaps defining a de facto standard to say, this is what we think, how we can solve this problem. Can you help us with this? Maybe you already solved this problem. Just contribute to this work so everyone can move forward in a much faster way. And we know the activity was called OpenCI, and in OpenFV we have XCI. They are actually trying to address same problems. Like in OpenCI level, we are talking about kind of de facto standard, and on OpenFV level, on XCI project, we are actually realizing what we decide or agreed across these communities, and then that will be part of the white paper as well, what is happening in different places. Hopefully in a few weeks, if things go as planned.
Is there some sort of automation integration lab?
Is it this one or?
you mean about the integration lab in China Mobile? Yeah, we actually are building an open NFV lab like back into 2015. And then we kind of involve that work so that we could have different vendors to plug into the lab and do the pre-integration. So in the future, we hope that based on XCI, based on the pipeline, we could build the kind of closed loop between our lab and the vendor's lab.
Process will be eventually automated.
Yeah, hope so.
Any other question? We have a few more minutes. Maybe we can take one or two more questions.
Okay.
Thank you for
Thank
joining.
you.
And hope to see you in this activity. It's important.